Hello, and welcome to Christian Life Assembly of God Church. Enjoy this teaching from our Sunday morning service.
We are starting a new series today called Christ Alone. It's the book of Colossians. The setting of it is the writer reiterates multiple times that Christ is number one. Christ is number one in creation, Christ is number one in resurrection, Christ is number one in all things. And he starts off with the passage that we're going to be looking at today. A few years ago, we spent quite a long time making sure that all the people in our adult Sunday school class could recite all of the books of the Bible. And so when we got to the four epistles of Paul that are together here, we recited Joanne's ditty, which is Go Eat Popcorn. Mine was General Electric Power Company, but it's Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians. So after Ephesians, you turn right and you're at Philippians, and then you turn right again, and we find ourselves in Colossians. So, in verse 9, our text for today is 9 through 13. For this reason also, he's given a prayer of thanksgiving at the beginning for their relationship in Christ, and he says, for this reason also, since the day we've heard of it, we've not ceased to pray for you and ask that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will and all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And understanding that they're surrounded by Greek philosophers or Greek people who have bought into what's called Gnosticism, that they had secret wisdom, secret knowledge, secret understanding. So he says, I want you to be filled with the knowledge of his will and with all spiritual wisdom and all understanding, so that you will walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, that the knowledge should lead us to a manner of walking, that we should behave differently because of what we know, to please him in all respects, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. Once again, the word knowledge is knowledge of the divine, knowledge of God. Strengthened with all power, according to his glorious might, for the attaining of all steadfastness and patience. In other words, that we have this power, and this power allows us to remain fixed even against adversity and difficulty. Joyously giving thanks to the Father who's qualified us to share in the inheritance of saints in the light. So he says that the Father has qualified us to share in the inheritance. He's given us the ability to become part of this, partakers of the inheritance of who? Of the holy ones. How's he done that? He's made us holy ones. And we are in the light, and the light is illumination and knowledge, but as he implies, it's also obedience. That obedience follows knowledge. In the United States today, we have this false dichotomy. If you get into a discussion with a person who's an atheist, they want to spend all their time talking about what you believe or what you don't believe. And I would say that a Christian should spend more time about what they do in response to what they believe. It's not just that we believe ideas or rhetoric or thoughts or philosophical insights. It's that this has changed our life. And one way of putting it is that in the Spanish language, there's two ways of knowing things. You can know facts, and you can know people. And it's more generalized than that. But the idea is that you can have a relationship, or you can know a fact about somebody. So we all know facts about people we've never met. Richard Nixon, Winston Churchill, George Washington, right? These are people who existed, we know facts about, but we never met. They're dead. We'll never be able to know them. But there are the people that we grew up with, the people that we've rubbed shoulders with, the people that we work with, the people that are members of our family. Our knowledge of them is different because we have a relationship with them. When we have a relationship with God, it is not just the accumulation of facts about God. It's not just getting a theology degree, but it transforms the way that we behave and the way that we live because we're walking in light. For he rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. So we were in darkness. Darkness is the idea of like you get into a old barn at night, there's no lights, and people have stacked things all over the place, and you're tripping and stumbling, and you're even afraid maybe that you'll fall into some lower section because there's an open door somewhere, and you really don't know where you're going, and every move that you make seems to bring injury to yourself. You hit yourself in the head, and then you hit yourself in the shins, and then you fall down a flight of stairs, and it's all because you're in darkness. You have no light. You were in the kingdom of darkness. You were stumbling about doing what you thought was the best that you could do in the situation that you were in, but that you had no clue of where you were, what you were doing, and where you were going. And God has transferred us from this into the kingdom of his Son. So the moving from darkness to light is not just that you believe different things, but you begin to be obedient. Where do I get that from? Because it's a kingdom. See, what's the minimum requirements for a kingdom? Is it a castle? Is it a princess?
No.
Is it what?
So it has to have a monarchy, it has to have a king. That's the minimum requirement.
Right. The other requirement is a king and subjects. It doesn't even need territory. There have been kingdoms that have disappeared from the face of the earth and then reasserted themselves because they've been taken over by enemies, and then they've thrown off the control of their enemies. The idea of geography is not central to the idea of a kingdom. It's the idea of a king. When you no longer have a king, you no longer have a kingdom. When you no longer have subjects, you no longer have a kingdom. But if you have a king and you have subjects, you have a kingdom, no matter how small or how large or what other accoutrements that it has, whether it has the castles, the capital, the government, the army, all those things are secondary. When we enter the kingdom of Jesus Christ, we are the subjects and we submit ourselves to the king. And unfortunately today, many people believe that they can be Christians and not be obedient to the king, because they believe it's some sort of contractual relationship. See, in our society, we've taken the position that if you are born on American soil, you're an American. Right? You grow up here, you have whatever opinions, ideas, you behave in other ways. We can strip you of your American citizenship under a very limited situation. Generally speaking, even if you're the most evil, pernicious, violent person, you still remain an American citizen. And even limiting your rights when we send you to prison or when we don't allow you to vote when you get out of prison, those are very traumatic. They're very much of a big deal, because we believe that if you're an American, you're always an American, whatever. But in the kingdom of God, it requires that you obey the king. In ancient times, if you disobeyed the king, they just cut your head off. In ancient times, if you didn't obey the king, they would take your property away from you. If you didn't obey the king, there was severe consequences to that. In the United States today, we give the privileges without the responsibilities. We give the privileges without the consequences. So people go out and do whatever they want to do. They can burn the American flag, but then turn around and call for the protection of the American government. They can say, defund the police, but when they get assaulted on the street, they don't call their social worker. They say, hey, I need the power of the government here. And when Wayne read today, he talked about that we should give honor and respect to the government. Does that mean that we always obey what the government says? No, that's stupid. Why is that stupid? Because as this passage says, our king is Jesus Christ. But we happen to be members of a civil society here on earth, and in that civil society, God has instituted things like the military and the police with the intention of not oppressing the people, but with the intention of protecting the people, of protecting the innocent. And if the government behaves in a way where it no longer protects the innocent, where it no longer does what God intended for it to do, that's where you get the Declaration of Independence, when in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to sever their relationship with another. That's a situation where they go through and they list the number of things that the British government has done to impinge upon their rights as they saw them before God. But up to that point, we show respect, we show deference, we pay our taxes, we do what is necessary to live among other people, and as the Bible says, to be a peace with all men. Right now, we are in a crossroads situation in our society. It is a powerful thing, and it is portrayed to us. I just saw a very interesting thing that there was a news release that there are two issues that are facing us right now: COVID and racism. And we all need to wear masks, but some people get scared of masks, so they don't have to wear masks if it reminds them of racism, or if they have a physical condition that prevents it. How many of you read the governor's declaration on wearing masks? Right? The idea is that we are beset by this thing of racism that has come out of nowhere that we've not ever seen before, but those of us that have been alive for a while know that it's been with us for a long time. In fact, I heard somebody the other day, I saw a report where they said this is the biggest mass movement in American history. And I don't know whether that's true or not, but I will say this much, that one of the things they've said is that there's far more white people involved than there were during the 1960s civil rights movement. What they didn't say was that the black leaders of the 1960s civil rights movement asked the whites to leave. They said that black people needed to free themselves. They need not to be freed by white people, or they would always owe a debt to white people. There were many well-intentioned white people, Christian, Jewish, atheist, that had joined together to try to support them, and most of them siphoned their energy off and went and became involved in the anti-war movement against the Vietnam War. Right now, we are in a crossroads. I do not think that the crossroads is racism. I do not think that Waunakee is a racist community. I have seen racists. I've seen people who believe that they're superior just because of their color of their skin or where they were born. I want to tell you something, that if you haven't figured out that white people are pretty screwed up by this point, that white people are not the superior race, you need to just look a little bit at human history, or maybe just sit on a street corner and watch white people for a while. Because white people can do really stupid things. And if they're the superior race, then you should be able to observe black people and see them operating much worse. I see them about the same. Some of them doing wise things and some of them doing foolish things. Some of them being ennobled by the things that they do, and some of them being depraved by the things that they do. I don't think that there is a superior race. And that's why the Bible says that we were out of one blood. God made all nations. We're of one blood. We're of one people. So racism, I do not think, is the threat here. I think the threat is the threat of a Marxist cultural overthrow of the nuclear family, of capitalism, of cisgender. I asked one day what people knew what cisgendered was. Most people didn't know. Cisgender means you believe that you're the gender that you were born with. It amazes me that George Floyd somehow has become the poster boy for transgender rights. What is George Floyd? Was he a transgender? He was not a transgender as far as I know. He was a black man who tragically died. But if you watch every one of the protests, there's these signs up, and if you look at Black Lives Matter's position statement, one of the primary things that they support is transgender black rights. You're going, how do you make that leap? Is that internally in the black community? I've seen black people say, black people do not stand for transgender rights. Well, we think that there's issues in America between black and white people, but it doesn't make the leap to transgender rights. Why is that there? It's there because there is a deep cultural war that's ongoing. And it's going to polarize people into two camps. One camp is overthrow the United States and overthrow all American history. And that's where the statue destruction goes. Historically, we can look at every revolution that's ever happened in France and Russia and other places. They start tearing down the statues. Even when the communists fell in the Soviet Union, what did they immediately do? They began to tear down the statues of the last 75 years of their history, right? They began to destroy many of the things that they previously had thought exemplified or told what they were about. So on one side you say, we're gonna erase all this, and statements like, I was watching Designated Survivor, and the President of the United States is trying to, has chided the Saudis for allowing child marriage because he's dealing with somebody whose wife is 14 years old. And he says, she's just a child, she's not an adult. And so they send over this sharp young woman, and she says, you know some things about us, but we know a lot more about you. And she starts off with a statement, you were founded as a slave state. Well, I want to tell you something, we were not founded as a slave state, right? Slaves came after there was permanent living in the United States, and slaves came before the establishment of the United States, and most Americans never owned slaves previous to the Civil War, and most people in the South never owned slaves before the Civil War. And if you told that to a college student on campus, they would probably blow their mind. Most Confederate soldiers never owned a slave. Many Confederate generals, like Stonewall Jackson, never owned a slave. Stonewall Jackson sent an offering to support a black Sunday school. And one time he was in a multi-day battle, and he wrote a note, and he said, I'm sorry my offering is late this week because I was busy. He was busy fighting for his life, but he still made time to get his offering in. And you can just think about that when you don't get your offering in, right? He was interested in black people. There was this Confederate general who moved to New Orleans after the war, and in New Orleans, he fought for black suffrage, the ability for blacks to vote. He opened up the first public schools for blacks. The United States was a very polyglot group of people from different cultures and backgrounds and societies, even within the United States. And were there people that owned slaves? Absolutely. Were there people that mistreated slaves? Absolutely. Did those people try to manipulate the federal government to assist them in that? Absolutely. But we fought a war over it. Think of how many other countries in the world have fought wars to eradicate slavery from the United States. I mean, from their country. Oh, we're the only ones. We're the only ones that gave hundreds of thousands of lives to see people no longer be enslaved and to make slavery illegal in the United States. And afterwards we enacted amendments like the 14th that extended rights to those freed slaves. Because the slaves could have been freed, taken out of slavery, and still not allowed to be franchised or treated as equal citizens. And if you want to remember even further back, this country was founded on black blood. Not the blood of slaves, but one of the first martyrs in the United States was at the Boston Massacre, a man named Crispus Attucks, who was a freed black man, who was killed in the crowd. I think there were 7 or 8 people that were killed by the British troops there. Crispus Attucks was one of them, one of the first people to shed blood in the struggle for the freedom of this country was a black man. And somehow, over time, we've forgotten the black people that were interwoven with our heritage. Now we say, oh, we've got to have black history. We don't have to have black history. What we need to do is to have history that is taught, that takes in the high points of all of the people that have contributed. that the most decorated military unit in World War II, in the United States military, was made up of Japanese American young men that fought in Italy. And that one of those men came back to Madison, where he was from, and settled in, there's a school named Tokay School that's named after him in Madison. Most people who go by Tokay School have no idea what it's about. But it's about a young man who, as a Japanese American young man, went fought with other Japanese American young men at the time when many of their families were in concentration camps, put in concentration camps by the United States government. And they still were patriotic Americans who were willing to lay down their lives for what it is. We need to have a balance in it. So anyways, we're going to see a polarization where you're going to be pushed to one side where you need to destroy everything, and on the other side, you're going to have the opinion, America, love it or leave it, this is my country, right or wrong, you know, I'm going to stand behind her. Neither one of those is a Christian response. A Christian says, my king is Jesus Christ. I live here, I'm supportive of the country, I'm patriotic, I stand for everything that is noble. When you see the flag, don't think about every evil thing that has been done under the claim of the United States. We just watched a movie called Glory, which was about the first black military unit that was formed during the Civil War from Massachusetts. They suffered horrendous casualties. They fought bravely. They worked hard. They suffered under true racism at that time, where people despised them. But there was one time when a white officer commands them to do something that they think is immoral, and the white officer that is the commander of their unit tells them to furl the flag. He acknowledges that the man that's giving the order is superior to him, and he doesn't know how he can disobey the order, and he's afraid of what they'll do to his troops if they don't obey the order. But he won't allow the United States flag to look on what they're going to do. So they roll it up. So when you think of the American flag, don't think of black children not being allowed to go to school or churches being bombed in the South. Don't think of the Japanese Americans being put into concentration camps while German Americans were allowed to walk free. Don't think about the fact that the Japanese that built the western side of the railroad, the Irish built the east, right? The met with the silver spike and the golden spike in the middle, right? The transcontinental railroad. The Chinese were not allowed to bring women into the country, and they were not allowed to become citizens. The Irish were, even though the Irish were treated like dogs as well.